Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. This is a place for vibrant discussions about mindfulness, movement practices, and ways to find more balance and presence in daily life. Here you'll find resources to help you progress on your path, as well as insightful conversations with mindful movement, yoga, meditation, and Dharma teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight embodied approaches to mindfulness and the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. This week's episode is going to be a guided meditation on compassion. There is a lot going on in the world right now, and if you're listening to this 6 months from now, a year from now, or whenever, I'm sure that will still be true. We can always benefit from more compassion as individuals and as a collective of interdependent beings trying to coexist on this planet. So today we'll be practicing self-compassion as well as compassion for others, and we'll do that by repeating some compassion phrases. The phrases give us something to focus on. They're the anchor in this type of meditation, and they are intended to help us gradually open to the experience of giving and receiving compassion. This intro will be pretty brief, but I thought it might be helpful to say just a few words about compassion before the meditation starts. If you're familiar with compassion practice, or you've listened to this episode before and you're coming back to do the meditation again, feel free to just skip ahead a few minutes and start your meditation. Compassion is one of the heart cultivation practices within the Buddhist mindfulness tradition. It is related to, but a little different from, Metta, or loving kindness, which is like unconditional friendliness or goodwill. Compassion is more like the heartfelt response to suffering or struggle. When we witness someone's distress or we experience our own distress, that goodwill feeling has a special, kind of more poignant, caring quality to it. That's compassion. It's not pity, where we are actually looking down on or othering the being that's suffering. Compassion comes from a place of recognizing that we all have our struggles, that is just part of being alive. And we recognize that it's hard, so our heart goes out to that. Practicing compassion meditation is a way to train and grow our capacity to meet suffering with more caring and less aversion. Because aversion is often a big part of what arises when we encounter suffering, right? It can kind of repulse us, like we don't really want to see it. Or we want to just jump right into fixing someone else's problem so that we can feel better. Compassion practice helps us learn to be present and to sit with that difficulty, and then to take appropriate action to help or to alleviate the suffering when we can. Compassion for others doesn't replace the need for an engaged response in the world, but hopefully it supports a clear and appropriate response and helps us to make that response less about our own reactivity. Likewise, self-compassion doesn't stop with the phrases, but it helps to set a certain tone for the tangible things we do need to do to take care of ourselves, or for the changes we might need to make that might improve our circumstances. When we do those things from an attitude of care and self-compassion, it is much more beneficial than doing those things from a place of self-criticism or shame. Here we'll practice with a set of simple compassion phrases that invite us to feel held in compassion. As I mentioned before, the phrases work as a focal point in the meditation, and they plant the seeds of compassion in the heart and mind. They can also become a little refrain that we can use anytime. Like when you find yourself saying one of these phrases as a reminder during the day, that is great. So we'll start by using the phrases to extend this care to ourselves, and then we'll extend it to all others who face similar challenges. Just imagining others who might face a similar kind of struggle that you do. Whether that's worry, grief, anxiety, physical pain, or some other form of distress, it's a good way to remember that we're not alone. If you want to hear more about compassion practices, I did a deeper dive podcast episode on this in March of 2022. So you can look up episode 28, and I'll also link to it in the show notes. One interesting, hopefully helpful part of that talk is about distinguishing between true compassion and the well-intentioned misfires like enabling, codependence, and ending up with compassion fatigue. There's also a sweet little story about a dachshund named Scarlet on that episode. Speaking of the show notes, if you'd like to see the compassion phrases I'm using here today all written out, they will be included on this episode's page on my website at movedtomeditate.yoga/podcast. And this is episode 78, so you can look it up that way. And one last thing before the meditation begins, if you find this practice beneficial or inspiring, or you've enjoyed the other talks and interviews on this podcast, please take a moment to share it with a friend. Maybe you have a meditation buddy or a yoga pal who might like it, or there's a person in your life who's going through a tough time or who always seems a little extra stressed. You can send it to anyone that might find something useful here. If you post the podcast on Instagram or Threads, be sure to tag me because I'm on those social medias. I'm not really on any of the others, but you can tag me at Addie_moved to meditate so I can say thanks, because I really appreciate when you share. I always love if you comment or you share or tag me, because I don't always know who's listening to the podcast until I see something like that pop up, and it really means a lot. Okay, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're doing all right today and that you'll enjoy this compassion practice. Welcome. This is Addie D. Hilster, and today I'll be guiding you through a meditation using compassion phrases. Let's start by making sure that the body is in a comfortable and kind position, whether that means sitting on a chair or sitting on a cushion, or perhaps laying down on the floor or even in your bed. Take some time to arrange the body with care. And we'll begin with the bell. Take a moment to touch in to the feeling of your body right now. The range of different sensations that might be present. Maybe some are intense and others are quite subtle. Maybe some sensations are okay and neutral. Maybe some are pleasant. Maybe others are uncomfortable or painful even. Let's see if you can take a breath with whatever's true right now. Checking in with your heart. You might even place a hand over the heart if that feels comforting to you. Noticing any moods, emotions, the presence of feeling. Can you just take a breath with what's here? And noticing how the mind is participating right now, along with the embodied sensations and the feelings. Is the mind moving quickly and busily? Or is it tired and foggy, spacey perhaps? Are there words or images coming up? Let's take a breath with the mind exactly as it is right now. And we'll begin to use our compassion phrases, first dropping them into this environment of body, heart, and mind, our own being. And just noticing how these words resonate through you. May I be held in compassion. May I be held in compassion. May my distress be eased. May my distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. May I be held in compassion. May my distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. May I be held in compassion. May my distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. Let's take a few breaths and allow these wishes to resonate through body, heart, and mind. Meeting our challenges with less aversion and more care. May I be held in compassion. May my distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. Let's widen the circle of compassion a bit. So if there's a particular way that you're challenged today, a struggle you're facing, can you imagine others in the world who face a similar challenge, a similar form of distress or grief, worry, perhaps physical pain? Just picturing the others like you that face this challenge. Knowing that you're not alone, and that just like you, these others deserve care and well-being. And we'll send them our wishes. May you be held in compassion. May all facing this challenge be held in compassion. May your distress be eased. May your distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. Where you face struggle, may you also find caring. May you be held in compassion. May your distress be eased. Where there's struggle, may there also be caring. And taking a few breaths, feeling into this energy of compassion, this caring heart. Resilient, able to meet life's challenges with wakefulness, with heartfulness. Coming out of the meditation, you might open your eyes and look around the room, noticing something in your environment that has a pleasant feel to it. Taking that in and noticing what's pleasant around you, what's supportive around you. And then continuing to move through your day with compassion. Thank you very much for your practice. So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find it that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, courses, or teacher trainings, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. This is Addie D. Hilster. Thanks so much for listening.